Did you know that in human history there was once a war that ended after just 38 minutes? This was not a minor skirmish or an isolated clash. It was an official war between two sides, complete with an ultimatum, artillery bombardment, and a clear outcome. So what could possibly cause a war, something that usually drags on for days, even years, to end so astonishingly fast? And why has that brief span of just 38 minutes continued to be recorded in world history to this very day? By the late 19th century, Africa had become the focal point of intense rivalry among European powers, as vast regions were swept into a wave of economic and military expansion. In East Africa, Zanzibar at the time was a small kingdom, yet it occupied a uniquely strategic position along major maritime trade routes. During this period, Zanzibar came under strong influence from the British Empire, even though it was still regarded, at least in name, as an independent state. Under agreements established earlier, anyone ascending the throne as Sultan of Zanzibar was required to obtain approval from Britain. This seemingly procedural requirement, however, would soon become the spark that ignited one of the shortest wars in recorded history. In 1896, the Sultan of Zanzibar, who maintained close and friendly ties with Britain, died suddenly, leaving behind a significant power vacuum. Almost immediately, Khalid bin Bargash declared himself Sultan without seeking British approval, directly violating the agreements that had long been in place. Britain's response was swift. The British authorities refused to recognize Khalid's claim and issued a clear ultimatum, demanding that he vacate the palace within a fixed deadline or face military action. Khalid, however, rejected the demand. He went on to assemble roughly 2,800 soldiers, fortified defensive positions and artillery, and raised his flag above the palace as a symbol of authority. At this point, the situation was no longer a matter of diplomacy. Khalid's actions were seen as an open and direct challenge to Britain, and as the ultimatum's deadline drew near, armed conflict became inevitable. At exactly 9 o'clock in the morning on August 27, 1896, as the ultimatum officially expired, British warships stationed offshore opened fire directly on the Zanzibar palace. Modern naval artillery quickly overwhelmed the defenders. Within the first few minutes, the palace and nearby fortifications began to collapse. Zanzibar's artillery was neutralized, and many soldiers panicked and abandoned their positions. The imbalance of power was now unmistakably clear. By 9:38 in the morning, the flag of Khalid bin Bargash was shot down from the palace, a moment widely regarded as the final blow. The fighting officially ended just 38 minutes after the first shots were fired. This conflict would later be recorded as the Anglo-Zanzibar War, becoming the shortest war ever documented in human history. When the guns fell silent, the outcome of this remarkably brief conflict was already beyond doubt. The scale of damage on each side revealed a stark imbalance of power. Zanzibar suffered hundreds of casualties, while the palace and numerous key structures were left in ruins. By contrast, the British side reported only a single sailor with minor injuries and no other significant losses. Following his defeat, Khalid bin Bargash fled the palace and sought refuge at the German consulate. He was later exiled and never regained power in Zanzibar. In the immediate aftermath of the war, Britain swiftly installed a new sultan, one who was fully compliant with British influence and control. In less than a single hour, the fate of an entire kingdom had been changed forever. This war, which lasted only 38 minutes, was not a major military event in terms of scale, yet its historical significance runs deep. First, it starkly illustrates the vast imbalance of military power during the age of imperial expansion, when modern technology and overwhelming firepower could determine an outcome almost instantly. Second, the event highlights the critical importance of timely political decisions, showing how a single miscalculation made under unfavorable circumstances can lead to a swift and irreversible conclusion. And finally, this war reminds us that history is not shaped solely by conflicts that drag on for years. Sometimes, just a few brief minutes are enough to change the fate of an entire nation. Have you ever imagined that a war could end in just a matter of minutes? In your view, was this simply a military victory, or was it the inevitable result of an overwhelming imbalance in power and technology? History is not always shaped by conflicts that last for years. Sometimes it is decided by fleeting moments, brief yet profoundly transformative. And if you enjoy discovering lesser known historical stories, told in a clear, balanced, and accessible way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring more fascinating chapters of history together.